In this video, I'm going to show you how to set up a scene where we're going to use a height output for displacement using the Arnold renderer. Alright, so let's just get started, and I'm going to first create a plane, and we'll scale this guy up. Let's jump over here to our channel box and our inputs, and for the subdivision width and height, I'm going to set this to 100. And let's see, I'll go ahead and turn off the ground plane. Now, again, we have this object selected. Let's come over here to the shape node, and we'll come over to Arnold. And I'm going to scroll down to the subdivision section, and for the type, we'll set this to Captain Clark. And the iterations, I'm going to set this to 4 to start. And then for the displacement attributes, I'm going to turn on auto bump, and we're going to come back in a bit and change this height value here. So for now, this is kind of get us into a starting position. Now let's come over here to Arnold, and we're going to create a skylight. So we'll come over here to Sky Dome Light, and for the color, what I'm going to do is just browse here for a map. And what I'm going to use, these are just a bookmark to the maps that ship with Substance Designer. So these are just HDR maps, and I am going to use the one here called Corsica Beach. This is what it looks like. So we'll click open. And I can see that here in my viewport. And so let's just select the Sky Dome and just kind of rotate it. I have my sunlight here. I kind of want to have it positioned so I have kind of a nice angle of light here. Now next, let's come over here to create, and let's create a camera that we can work with. So we have our camera, and let's just look through selected on this. And here, let's turn on our gates. So our film gate, resolution gate. Let's get this guy set up. So let's see here, we'll do something like this. And again, let's go back here to that environment map, and I'm just going to rotate it so my light is kind of off at this angle. All right, so this is going to kind of set up the scene that I have so far. And let's come over here to my Hypershade tab. And let's see, we'll grab these nodes, and I'm just going to remove them out of here. And let's now create an instance of the Substance. Let's create an instance of the Substance node. And for the texture set settings, I'm going to browse for my file here. And let's see where I have this guy placed. And let's see, come in here to my toolbox where I keep all of my substances. And let's see here, SBS. And I'm going to use this rock dirt ground. So we'll open this guy up. Now here you can see in the attribute editor, everything's blank. I've mentioned this in a previous video where this is just kind of a refresh bug. So if I just click off and then click back on, we can see everything is set correctly. So now what I'm going to do here is, let's see here for my automatic baking, you can see here that this is already enabled, and my output cache, I'm just using my Maya project folder. In this case, what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to keep it as is for now, just using the Maya project folder. All right, so the next thing I need to do is I'm going to hit the tab key here, and I am going to create a standard surface. So I'm using Arnold. I'm going to use an AI standard surface material. And then let's middle mouse click and drag this here onto my ground plane. All right, now let's start connecting here my Substance outputs. So I'm going to first create a base color. I'm also going to create a normal and a roughness, and finally here a height. Okay, so we have all that together. Let's select these nodes and just reorganize them here. Let's grab our Arnold surface and bring that up. All right, now I can just start connecting my textures. So here I have the base color texture for the out color. I'm going to plug this here into the base color. I'm going to use the out alpha of my roughness and plug this into the specular roughness. And here for my normal, I'm going to create a bump 2D node. Let's take my out alpha to the bump value, and we're going to switch this to tangent space normal. And then finally, the out normal is going to go right here into the normal camera. Okay, so we have a basic setup here. Let's come over to our viewport, and I'm just going to click this button, which is going to let me view this as textured. Let's go back here to the Substance. And let's set my resolution all the way up here to 2048. So now the Substance engine is recomputing these maps to this new higher resolution. It'll take just a moment here, and then everything will get propagated over here to the Arnold material. All right, so that process has been completed, and I think the next thing I'd like to do is maybe come over here to the the place 2D texture node, and maybe set my repeat UV. Let's just do this a 2x2 here. So we're just going to tile the textures. And so here we'll set the first one here. This is the U coordinate. And again, just takes a moment just to update all the textures. And we'll set this guy here to 2 as well. And this is our V. All right, so this is our basic scene as we have it set up so far. So now what we're going to do is just let me open up an IPR render here. Let me grab my render view. Looks like it's off. Looks like it's off monitor. So I'm just going to drag and drop this guy into here. All right, so here's what we're getting so far. And one other thing I forgot to do. Let me go back here to my bump 2D, and let me go to the Arnold tab, and I need to turn off the flip red and green. So make sure that this is rendering correctly here. All right. So here's what we're getting so far. So we'll just pause this for now, and let me just drag this guy over. All right, so let me just close up my hypershade. And I think I'm just going to just zoom out a little bit, just frame up this shot here a little better. Something like this. Let me go back here to my environment. So I'm just selecting my background or just clicking here in the background to select the environment map and just rotate this guy a little bit. And now we'll come back. Let me just unpause my IPR. So we'll get something like this is going to work. All right, so we're getting like a base render here, but the problem is that, well, we don't have any displacement. This is all like really flat, and so we need to start to work with some displacement here. All right, so to do that, we're going to go back here to the hypershade. Now, if I select here my ground plane, we've already set up the Arnold attributes here for the subdivision. Go back to subdivision. The type I set to Catmull Clark. Iterations, we set this to 4 by default. We may up this value a bit higher. And then my displacement attributes here, I'm using this auto bump. Now, this height value is going to be pretty high by default. So I'm going to take this down to 0.02. And then what I'm going to do is come over here where I have the shading group here for the AI standard surface. And this here is where I have my height. Now, in the previous video in our course where we talked about just kind of basic usage of the Substance plugin, I talked about, you know, your automatic baking and your formats and things. But when you're working with a format, something that needs to have a really high bit depth, something like, say, height, you'll notice here that this is going to generate out as an EXR just, you know, by default. So you're going to have that high fidelity data that you need to do a proper displacement. So let's select the shading group node here, and we'll come over to our shading group tab, and all I need to do is just take the height. I'm going to middle mouse click and drag that right here into the displacement material. So now we have this guy set up correctly. All right, and we'll just select our nodes here. We'll just kind of reframe everything, regroup everything. So this is my new shading network. And now let's come over here to our render, and I'll just unpause this guy, and let's see what this is going to do as it starts to render the scene. And so now we're starting to get some depth here, and you can see that that height value I set around 0.02 was pretty close by default. So this is what I'm starting to get here. So now, let's see, I'm just going to pause this again, and let me go back here to my material, and let me set my iterations up to, let's say, 8. So let's set this a bit higher, and let's see if this makes any bit of difference at all. Okay, so 8 was pretty high, so I just paused the video and I dropped that back down to 4 just to speed up the time. I mean, sorry, dropped that to 5 just to speed up the time. Okay, so now let me just take a look again at just kind of framing up a shot here, seeing what I can get. All right, so we'll just go with something like this. So the next thing we're going to do is add some depth of field, and to help us with this, I'm going to create a measure tool. So we're going to go over here to create measure tools, and we're going to create a distance tool. And I'll just put down these points here. And let's come over here to our outliner, and let's grab here, we'll just say locator 2, and I'm going to parent that underneath my camera. And then here, I'm going to go to this locator 2's transform tab and just zero everything out like this here. And you can see that that places that locator right here at the camera location. All right, so now what we can do is just grab our locator 1 here, and let's go back into our camera view. So let's look through selected on this. Here is that camera node, and now I can just kind of move this guy to place, you know, to determine where I want this focal point to be. So I'm just going to try maybe something around here, so it's close to 19. So we'll use that. Now, let's select our camera. And here underneath the Arnold tab for the Arnold attributes for the camera, I'm going to enable depth of field. And for that focal distance, I'm going to type in 19. I'll type in a aperture depth of field here. Let's try like 0.15, something like this. And my aperture blades will set to like 8. And now let's bring this guy back into here, and we'll just unpause my IPR render. You can see here that we're getting our focus point is here, and then we're starting to get some nice kind of depth of field kind of blur here in the background and foreground. All right, so let's pause this guy. And one other thing that I'm going to do, let's see, well, we don't need to go out of the perspective view. We'll just keep looking through our camera. Let's come over to our Arnold render settings, and underneath the Arnold renderer tab in environment for atmosphere, I'm going to create just some fog here. And for the color, let's see, and we'll probably just darken this just a little bit. Let's see what this does. So we'll come into here, and we'll just unpause that. Now here you're seeing we're starting to get some of this kind of fog. The idea here is, just creating some atmospheric perspective here. And so that's looking pretty nice, kind of just giving us just, like I said, just a little bit more atmosphere here. Now all we need to do is just go into our render settings, and you set this up and do just a full render. And that's going to close out this lesson. In this video, we just quickly set up an entire scene to do some displacement rendering using the height output from our Substance. We set some subdivision properties here on our ground plane mesh, and then fed the height into the displacement material of the shading group of the Arnold standard surface material. So thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you next time.